2, 1.
Okay, so section 4 is graphing linear equations, but they are in what's called standard form. And standard form is just a form that you are gonna have to get used to. And the form is ax plus by equals c. And a, b, and c are all numbers. So the x is going to stay an x, the y is going to stay a y, and an example might be something like 3x plus 4y equals, let's say, 24. So all of your equations this section will be in this format, and really these can be any numbers, but it's a number squeezed with x and a number squeezed with y equals a constant down here. And that's what standard form is. Okay, so sometimes when you're given something in standard form, one of them is missing. So we're going to first start off with what's called graphing horizontal and vertical lines. And horizontal and vertical, if we've forgotten, a horizontal line just means it's going to be a straight across line. So that's going to be horizontal. And a vertical would be something like this, where it's completely up and down, no slope to it, just a vertical line. So if we start with let's start with horizontal. So any time that you have an equation that just has a y, so for example, if we have y equals 5, well, if I have to graph that, it means that y can only equal 5. So what you can do is you can test out some numbers. So I'm just going to make myself a little chart, and it says up here that y has to be 5. So every single one on the y side has to be 5. So it really doesn't matter what we put in for y. You can pick any y's you want to, and then you just have to go graph them. So knowing that my chart becomes my ordered pairs, 1, 5, 2, 5, and 3, 5 are my ordered pairs. So 1, 5 over 1, up 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's my first dot. Oops, hold on. So there's my first dot. Then I got 2, 5 over 2, up 5. Again, put the dot, and over 3, up 5. So we can see here what's forming, and I could keep going. I could keep making the dots, but you can see what's going to form is a horizontal line on the y-axis. So whenever it says y equals, and it has to be by itself, it cannot have the other variable with it, it's going to form a horizontal line. Okay, so the same can be with vertical lines. Anytime that you have an x equals, and again, notice that the other variable is not there. It simply says x. So it means if you made a chart of numbers, and these were your x's and these were your y's, the only thing we know is that x has to be -2. So you test some numbers, but it has to be -2. So the y's, you get to make them up, because it doesn't say anything up here about the y's. So let's say 0, 2, 4. And again, I'm simply making them up. So knowing that our chart becomes our ordered pairs, I'm going to go graph -2, 0, -2, 2, and -2, 4. So when I graph, you can see what forms is a vertical line. So vertical lines, anytime x equals, and horizontal lines is anytime you have y equals. Okay, so something else that standard form is useful for is finding the intercepts. So what the intercepts mean are, where does the line cross the x-axis and the y-axis? So let's say, for example, I have something that looks like that. Well, if that's my line, this point right here, where it crosses the y-axis, is called the y-intercept. And same thing down at the bottom. This point down here where it crosses the x-axis is called the x-intercept. So when we use this to find our intercepts, that's what we're going to be finding. We're going to be finding these points at where they cross. So our first example, you can see it's in standard form. Remember standard form, ax plus by equals c. And you can see that it's in this format. The 4x, the 4 would be the a, the 3 would be the b, and the 12 would be the c. So what you have to do is, in order to find one of the intercepts, you can make yourself a little chart. So we have x and y, and one of them we want x to be 0, and the other one we want y to be 0. Because remember, we're trying to find the intercepts. We're trying to find where do they cross the axis. So by me putting in these zeros right here and right here, it will give me both of those points. So we just need to test the zeros. So use your chart. If it says that x is 0, you're going to come back up here and you're simply going to put a 0 in for x. So 4 times 0 plus 3y equals 12. And you can see what happened here is now there's only one variable in here, this y over here. So we're going to solve. So 4 times 0 is gone, because 4 times 0 is 0. So we're left with 3y equals 12. Divide by 3, y equals 4. So when you tested 0, 4 is the answer. So one of the intercepts is 0, 4. The other one, now I got to do the same thing over again. Now we have to go test this 0. Well, now it says that the y is 0. So I'm going to do the exact same thing, but notice I'm not going to put it in for the x. I'm going to put it in for the y. So 3 times 0, gone. So you're left with 4x equals 12. Divide by 4, x equals 3. So then you're going to go put up here. So your final answer is your intercepts of 0, 4 and 3, 0. And it is important to note that all ordered pairs are listed XY. So if you didn't make a chart and you were finding the X, like let's say you got something like X equals 3. Well, it would have to go in the X spot, and then the other number that you don't know would just be a 0. Or if you're finding the Y, again, which one's the Y? Well, the Y is the second spot. So 4, and the other number would be a 0. So notice these say the exact same thing as your chart, but if you didn't want to make a chart, you could also do it that way. Okay, so the last thing you're going to have to do is to be able to interpret a word problem. So I've given you a word problem here, and it says you have $16 to spend at the carnival. Ride tickets are $4, and game tickets are $2. The equation 4x plus 2y equals 16 represents the situation. And then you can see here in parentheses, it says X has to stand for rides. And how I know that is because you have to go back up to the problem. And it says that ride tickets are $4. So that's why I can see that the 4X stands for rides, the 2Y stands for games, and the 16 is the total that I have to spend. And they will give that to you. You don't have to make that up. That will be given to you, and you're just going to have to be able to interpret the intercepts. So first of all, if I'm going to interpret the intercepts, I have to find them. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my intercepts, equals 16. So the first thing, I'm going to say that x is 0. So we can say 0 goes in the x spot. What's the y going to be? So 4 squeezed with 0 plus 2y equals 16. Well, 4 times 0 is gone. So divide by 2, y has to be 8. So 0, 8. So I'm going to go graph over here, 0, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 0, 8, I'm going to graph. And that means something. I don't know yet, but it stands for something. So now we do the other one. Y has to get set to 0. So now I do the same problem, but now I put in the 0 for y. So again, 2 times 0 is gone. Divide by 4, x equals 4. So if x equals 4, again, and the x spot has to be the first one, y has to